Hi, I'm Alistair Davidson, a Master Trainer for DaVinci Resolve, and today we're going to have a quick look at the difference between log and primary grading controls. I'm often asked what the difference between the primaries and the log wheels are in the colour page, and we're going to break that down now. The easiest way I think of showing this is actually using some of the images that are in the Resolve manual, and these are them. So this is a representation of how the primaries tools work exactly. On the left hand side we have our shadows, on the right hand side we have our highlights, and then the middle is our midtones, and these you'll see are named lift, gamma and gain, just like the primaries controls down here. The lift controls control our shadows, but from this image here you can see that they control all of the shadows, and using this blue line we can actually see that they control some of the midtones and a little bit of the highlights as well. If we're looking at our gain, which is our highlights, we can see the inverse. We control all of our highlights and again some of our midtones and very little of our shadows. Meanwhile, the gamma control, you can see, controls pretty much everything in the midtone range and quite a bit in the shadows and the highlights. And to show this, I'm doing this with just a grayscale on the timeline here. Again, you can see it represented in the scopes here if you want as well. If I pull my gain, which is my highlights, you'll see I start to blow out all the white on this grayscale. And the more I push it, the more I lighten up of the image all the way down into the shadows. I can keep going until most of my grayscale is pure white. If I reset that and do the inverse with the lift controls, you'll see I can pull that all the way down until most of my grayscale is black as well. The gamma control, you'll see I can adjust pretty much everything apart from the darkest part and the brightest part of my grayscale there. But what about our log controls? I'm going to switch over to the log wheels here, and I'm going to jump back into the images that are shown in the Resolve manual. Except this is the image that I'm going to be looking at this time. And you can see the area of control for each of the shadows, midtones and highlights is significantly different. For example, if I was to affect my shadow wheel, you'll see that I'll affect pretty much all of the shadows and a tiny bit of the midtones. And we'd have the inverse with the highlights, where we control a lot of the highlights and a little bit of the midtones. But again, there's no overlap here between the shadows and the highlights with this control. You'll also see these low and high range arrows down here, and they are movable by us. I'll show you what I mean. Again, I'm going to use the grayscale in this image. If I pull down my highlights now, or push my highlights up, you can see that the range that I'm actually affecting is much smaller than before. Before, with the primaries controls, I was able to affect all the way down to about here in my grayscale. Again, if I do the same with the shadows, if I push them up or pull them down, you'll see that the number of steps that I'm affecting with this log control is much smaller than I did with the primaries control. And again, we'll have something similar with the midtones here. Now, the high and low range arrows that we saw in this image are here, with the downwards facing arrow next to the word range and the upwards facing arrow next to the word range. What I'll do is I'll push the highlights so that I've blown out all of the highlights I possibly can. And then I'll come to this upwards facing arrow in range, so the upper range, and you'll see that I can increase or decrease that range control. So I can choose how much of my image I'm actually affecting. If I double click on the word range, it'll reset it, and I could do the same with the low range as well. I'll have to make an adjustment so that that's visible. But you'll see now I can affect the range of the image that I am correcting. I hope this has been helpful. Let us know if there's anything else you want to know about DaVinci Resolve by contacting the ScanPro video team.